Welcome to the Franchise Frontier, the podcast where we explore the evolving franchise landscape, dive into latest industry trends, and share actionable tools and tactics to help you build and grow your business.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Franchise Frontier podcast. I'm your host, Dave Kimura. And on today's podcast, of course, we will explore the playbook of business ownership and the mindset it takes to win. Like on most things, when it comes to business, like football, it's not just about touchdowns. Sometimes it's about first downs and being very strategic and following a play set. Today, we got a special guest, Josh Skolnick, on the show today. He is a serial entrepreneur and a founder of many franchise brands. So, Josh, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
So Josh, just start us off a little bit about your journey. What was the moment where you knew, I want to be an entrepreneur, or I would rather be an owner than a employee?
Yeah, great question, Dave. My experience and really exposure to business began at an early age. My mother and father had a hardwood flooring business, just a small family-run business, 2 to 3 employees at its peak, ran out of our home. And watched my mother and father really run that business and worked for them weekends, evenings, as well as in the summertime with my father. And so never saw anybody in my family actually continue their education beyond high school. So really being second generation entrepreneurs, my parents being second generation entrepreneurs, really business ownership just was sort of the focus for me as a child.
So when you started some of these businesses, what are some of, to your point about working late nights and those type of things, weekends, what are some of the sacrifices that you had to make that most people, when it comes to business ownership, never see?
If I look back to even being a child before I started my first business, I would see my father in the driveway preparing the vehicles for the next day. I would go to supply houses, like even places as simple as Home Depot or Lowe's, with my father to pick up supplies for the next day. On the weekends, we would change the oil. We would rotate the tires on the vans. And so, when I got into business for myself, it was about 9 years old. I began push mowing lawns in the local neighborhood where I grew up in Eastern Pennsylvania. And, for me, I had a pretty good idea, general idea of what it was going to take to, really focus on building a business. But one of the things that a lot of people, I think, oftentimes don't realize when you launch a new business is that early on, you don't really have the full team built out. And so there's some things that, you might have one employee to do a certain task within your business. And until you can grow your business to a size and scale to where you have 2 or 3 or 4 or more people doing certain tasks, if somebody's on vacation or sick or they're just absent, it may fall back onto you as the business owner to take care of certain tasks within your business.
That's a great point. When you think about some of the service industries that you've been in, what kind of gave you the confidence when you started to get into these industries, especially when sometimes there's a lot of competition?
So every business I've been in has been home service focused, whether it be in the lawn care business, the dumpster business, and then everything that I've done beyond those first 2 large franchise brands that I launched. For me, I've never really thought a lot about the competition. I've just always really focused more on what can I do better? What do consumers, both on a residential and commercial basis, need in order to be, satisfied with the services being offered, or to make a differentiation within the marketplace of why someone should choose my business over my competition. And so while a lot of business owners, I think, spend too much time focused on what the competition's doing, like as an example, when I was in a tree business, I would have employees come to work and say, "Oh, did you see company X just bought a new truck?" And my response would be, "Congratulations, that's awesome for them." And I would just continue on. Where like the employees actually thought about it as like, wow, like what did they do differently to get that truck? Or like, why didn't we get a new truck? And we got plenty of new vehicles and new equipment. But what I really tried to show my people was, let's focus on what we do really well. when the time comes for us to buy new equipment, we'll invest into that equipment when the time's right. But most importantly, let's be a customer-focused business that we deliver a high level of customer service. We create a streamlined customer journey as well, that we make it very difficult or hard for the customer at the end of the sales process to say no, because we obviously want to gain a yes out of every appointment that we can get a yes from.
And in the home service business, that would be, if you were to look it up, that would be probably the most understated thing in the home service business is the customer journey. And you hear about roofers being the least liked and those type of things. So it's important that you focused on not only the customer journey, but making sure the customer's problem was taken care of in a timely manner and a way they expected in order to move forward. So when you think about business ownership, you've been through it a bunch, you've seen it a bunch. What do you think's the biggest misconception that people have about what it really takes to operate a business?
Well, just to step back for a minute, I do want to hit on something that you said before you asked this current question about businesses and the service that they offer and just the lack of service in many situations. It always amazes me as a business owner and entrepreneur, how many business owners do business with companies that have amazing sales process, amazing customer service, and they could easily rip off and duplicate what a company they've done business with has provided to them and use it within their own business, and they just completely ignore it. So like I use like hotels as an example, or a company like Apple, Amazon. Most people have ordered products on Amazon. What have they created for consumers? Just ease and convenience of, buying products. I mean, my wife could text me at any given time and be like, hey, we need something. And within 5 seconds, I can have it ordered on Amazon if that's the right place to go. If I go to an Apple store because I want a new phone or I need my phone repaired, they have a great scheduling process of how I can schedule my Genius Bar appointment if I need something fixed. Or if I walk in the store because I want a new device, they check me in and I immediately get a text when it's my turn, and they bring, the associate right to me. They say, hey, wait right here. Associate will be right with you. And I leave with everything. And it's just extremely convenient. You think of hotels. I travel a lot for business, and I only book Marriott and Hilton hotels. Why? Because they have convenient apps, all my payment information stored, my preferences of what I like at a hotel are stored because they've asked me these questions. I'm not a picky hotel stayer, by the way, but at the end of the day, like I landed just a few days ago, late in the evening, got right to my hotel. I walked in, a digital key was on my phone. I went right to my phone, was able to shower, go to bed, wake up the next day and hit the ground running. And so like those are things where like business owners have those types of experiences like I just described, where those are just 3 businesses that I do business with on a regular basis. And there's many things that I've learned from those companies I've implemented into businesses that I've owned and operated, and processes that have really created convenience.
Yeah, it is, to your point, it is incredible that there would still be any business that would be lacking in something customer journey wise, because most of the imperfections of the customer journey are not because of a CRM or anything to that matter. They're just about customer service. They called you. Did you call them back?
Absolutely.
Did you return the email? If you said you were going to be there at 4, were you there at 4? Those things are so basic. But to your point, there's a lot of businesses that are still continuing to operate and not fall in that mold. I have a gentleman coming to my home today for pest control.
Okay.
And to be honest with you, when I heard the message, which was automated, about what time they were going to be there, in my brain, it was going to be between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m.
Yep.
But it was a smaller window. It was between 12 and 2, which, to be honest with you, I was appreciative of, because I thought that's a more manageable time.
Yeah.
But for there still to be, now we'll see if he shows up between that time, and that'll be the biggest thing. But to your point, there are so many things that, and it goes back to same as football and athletics. No one's creating new plays.
No.
It's perfecting the play that was already ran, or adding a wrinkle here or a wrinkle there. So the fact that home service brands, or even brands in general, are able to then look or even deal with these type of companies on a regular basis and say, I really like that they did that.
Yep.
Right? Do I wish that more hotels gave out warm cookies? I do. I enjoy the warm cookie. However, maybe that's not a thing, right? So But to your point, I think that's a great look into. It's not about reinventing the wheel. It's about making the process right for you. Same thing with your customer. How do I make the process right for that customer? And even in that customer journey, if you've performed a service for Jill down the street and you know that likes to have people there between this time and that time, to write that down in the CRM as a note
Yes.
and then provide that service is not that difficult to do. It's,
Correct.
it's very much about the customer service. So going back, I know we got off track a little bit on that question, but misconception about what it takes to really own your business. So talk about that.
One of the things I see oftentimes, and we've talked about it a little bit, is that people think when they start a business, they allow pride to get in the way of just simplicity. And a lot of the things that you need to do in a business are right in front of you. You've already had those experiences in the past. There's oftentimes a reason of why you've been driven to get into business for yourself. When you think about in the franchising space, a lot of the people that I speak to are looking at business ownership because they're either burnt out on working for somebody else. They can't achieve their financial goals while working for somebody else, and they just want to really be in better control of their own time, as well as their financial future. And so they'll choose business for that. But as people get into business, I just see people, get bogged down by, overanalyzing every little detail as opposed to just doing. I talk about 3 key character traits a lot: execution, accountability, and work ethic. And like, as you talk about football, everything on a football field, it's all about execution.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously the accountability and the work ethic comes into it, because you've got to show up. You've got to put in the work while you're there on the field. Where in business, it's the same way. Sometimes people get caught up in this self-proclaimed feeling of like, everyone's going to know who I am. Or like, if I open this new business, people are just going to come to me. And then they ignore things like the networking. They ignore things like the recruiting of the employees. Like, when you're a business owner, you never stop recruiting. You never stop networking. I'll tell you, generally, my wife gets like annoyed with me because anywhere we go, I'm always talking business. We go into a restaurant, I'm offering, advice to a waiter or a waitress that might be waiting on the table of how they could better, upsell the table or deal with a situation I might have observed them deal with in the restaurant while I was there. If I'm sitting on a plane flying somewhere, I'll talk to the person next to me. I don't know how many people talk to the person next to them on a plane, because we live in a world today where even if you sit down next to someone in public, you don't look at them, you don't make eye contact, you don't talk to them. I'm the total opposite. I talk to them. I want to get to know who they are, where they're going, what are they doing. And, there's all these opportunities. And so, I think when it comes to getting into business, you just got to be extremely open-minded and then just look at those core character traits, just execute, have that accountability and that work ethic, and everything's going to follow. The other thing that people, I think, really ignore too is that your actions today have a greater impact on the future. And so one example of that is like last week, we were talking about different sales training. And, one of the topics that came up is what you do in the next 30 days is going to directly impact the next 90 days of whatever it is that you're attempting to improve within your business. And so, if you prospect heavily for the next 30 days, what's probably going to happen the following 90 days? Some of those people that you prospected are going to call you because they might have a job, they might have a referral, or they might have a recommendation or something that could better improve your business. So just really put yourself out there and be committed. Don't do the hokey pokey. I've also seen a lot of business owners where they put, one foot in and one foot out. It's either you're in or you're out. Which one is it going to be? Because when you commit yourself and you commit yourself wholly, you're going to really be focused and drive success.
And again, what were your 3 key components you said?
Execution, accountability, and work ethic.
The interesting part about those things when I think about them is they can't be done for you.
Correct.
They are no different in sports as attitude and effort. So to your point, if those are the 3, call it bullet points for you, a business owner can directly affect those 3 things every single day just based on attitude and effort.
Yeah.
So can I be accountable? Yes. Can I put in the effort to do said thing? Yes. So that's interesting when you look back at when people say, even to my question, what are the things that people fail at in business? it's interesting to know that, like most things, it has to do with a reflection of the candidate or the person running the business. And so most times and oftentimes when you look back on a struggling business, it's probably an internal attitude and effort scenario that has maybe led to the struggle. Would you agree
Yes.
with that?
Oh, absolutely.
And so that being said, obviously failure and struggle is part of the journey. In your scenario and all the businesses you've been a part of, talk about one time where a wall was there or a speed bump or something and how you pushed through it.
Well, one of the things I look at in business all the time, and I speak about openly with a lot of people, is I'm a firm believer that a lot of people, when they look at other business owners, they don't get an opportunity to see behind the curtain. So I talk about business ownership being 360 positive days a year. And then there's 4 or 5 WTF days where you're just like, why am I doing this? Is the juice worth the squeeze? But you can't allow those 4 or 5 bad days to cast a shadow over the 360 great ones. For me, over the years, when I look at, challenges that I've run into in businesses, uh, my challenges have never been around customers. It's never been around the services that we offer. It's just all about culture and people. And so while so many people get into business and they focus a lot, Dave, on all of the things they think they have to do in order to build a successful business. If you just focus on building your team, recruiting the right people, empowering those individuals, removing the mindset of thinking the only way to get something done right is to do it yourself, and you lift people up to be successful within your business, they will do great things for you. And they will show up every day and they will act like an owner, even though they're not, and have your best interest at heart. And so I think it's something that gets overlooked a lot because people as entrepreneurs look at a lot of the people that work for them as strictly a tool in their toolbox and that they're replaceable. And yeah, people are replaceable, but not disposable. And so when you really just think about what's going to really create success in your business it's those people. And if you break down those barriers of the people, every business owner I've ever talked to that was negative or had complaints, whatever the issue was they were dealing with in their business came right back to their people. An unhappy customer, why is a customer unhappy? Because something didn't go right on the job. Something didn't go right on the job. It was poor planning by somebody. It was a mistake by somebody. It all comes back to the people. So I think that's the core focus that you really have to look at in anything that you're doing in building a business.
That's a really good point. And as I talk to many franchisees in general, I think that there's a portion of that that comes down to the owner really understanding the business, taking the time to dive in and be boots on the ground, feet in the mud, where now they can be on the same level as their employees and really understand and cater to the things that an employee might need to be more successful or the business might be missing just from having that different viewpoint. I've found that as I've talked to people, you know, most times it's that second go around of employees where they really know how firm they want to be on their culture
Yep.
and what they're really trying to provide as far as a service. If you're talking about a roofing company, it's so much more than providing shingles on a roof.
Yes.
It's about that journey. It's about what do you want to do as the business owner and provide in your community, and then how do I find the people to then uphold that standard and then push forward.
Yeah. And on your example of like a roofing company, you think you can choose to either be uh, a first in class provider within a market, or you could be the best price within the market. And that comes back to what are you trying to build a culture of and a reputation of? Do you want to sell on service or sell on price? I mean, I've always been the type of person I want to sell on service and get paid a premium for the service that's being offered to a consumer, because then you're in a position that if there are hiccups or there is a mistake, you have margin to correct your mistake.
The biggest part of that is when you sell on service, you have to provide a great service.
Yes.
And that has to be from start to finish throughout the process. So, when you talk about business ownership, some people consider it to be somewhat of a roller coaster. For you, as a business owner in multiple businesses, in that roller coaster of business, how do you keep yourself grounded and motivated?
Well, for me, business ownership is all I know. I've actually never been a W-2 employee, Dave. And so it's hard for me at times to relate with people that have been in that position. But as far as staying grounded, it's easy to allow a business to control you and really take over your time. And so you have to be very diligent to ensure that you're setting boundaries. What hours of a day are you willing to commit to your business? What sacrifices from your personal life, your family, are you willing to make for the business? At the end of the day, there's always going to be sacrifices that have to be made simply because, when you're building a business, you're running a business, Dave, it's one of those things that you can't it's not punching a time clock. You can't be like, today my business is going to operate from 9 to 5. A business is 24/7, 365 days a year. So if a challenge or an issue comes up, it might be after hours, it might be evenings, weekends, whatever, and you deal with it. But if you're the type of person that understands how to put a process in place, understands how to really problem solve, really isn't anything that should get into your way or really overcome, your happiness, your freedom, and just everything that you're looking to get out of business ownership.
Yeah, that actually ties right into my next question, which was going to be, the definition in your mind of the difference between being self-employed and a true business owner.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of people that own businesses that are self-employed because they've done nothing more than buy themselves a job. They're the epitome of the only way to get something done right is to do it yourself. Just this morning, I texted someone who's a business owner that was had provided me an estimate for something, and their response back to me was, "Hey, I'm really sorry. I asked my office to deal with that while I was on vacation last week, but it's clearly now I know the only way to get something done right is to do it myself." And like I wrote him back, I'm like, "No, that's not correct, Johnny." The gentleman's name was Johnny. I said, "Johnny, that's not correct. You need to better train your people. You need to create more accountability on your people." So, um, business ownership needs to be, as I've said multiple times, about building the people. If you're looking to get into business to strictly buy yourself a job, to have 1 or 2 employees, like my mother and father was a great example of that. Never had more than 2 to 3 employees. And frankly, if my mother and father had a college education, they could have made more money working for somebody, going into corporate America or doing some type of a role within a company, whether it be getting into some type of management or any other career path. But they chose, following their parents' footsteps, to run a small mom and pop business, which my grandparents on both my father's side and my mother's side did the exact same thing. I was the one that really broke that mold and built much larger businesses and became more of an entrepreneur. And so, it is something that you have to, keep front and center of what do you want? There's nothing wrong with being your own boss and buying yourself a job and being the person that has to do everything. And, you get compensated for doing that and you have better control on your schedule. There's, again, like I said, nothing wrong with that. But I think most people are really in today's world looking for autonomy and freedom to be able to build something so that they can be in better control of their time. We don't know how long we're here for, Dave. And so one of the things I always talk to, and especially as I get older, I start to realize more and more that my most valuable asset is time. And, we don't know how much of it we have. So we want to be able to maximize those things. I've watched too many people in my life work their entire career, friends of mine's parents, work their entire career to retire and then spend majority of their retirement instead of being able to travel and do the things that they talked about doing their whole life. All they're doing is going from doctor's appointment to doctor's appointment to doctor's appointment, because when we get old, things break.
Right.
And so at the end of the day, it's business ownership. It can give you the freedom and the ability to do things much earlier in life and not feel guilty about that.
So looking back on your businesses, was there a mind shift from obviously learning from your mother and father and realizing, okay, eventually maybe you would never think about the franchise world back then, and that's okay. But to your point, there has to be a mind shift where it comes from I can do this myself to I need to build and implement the processes and procedures so that way I can empower my employees. Was there ever a mind shift for you where you thought to yourself, like there was an epiphany where you're like, wait a minute, I need to teach other people how to do these things in order for us to be the most successful we can be?
Well, I thought very small early on, where every time I analyzed, if I hired someone to do that instead of doing it myself, like that would be great and I could build my business. But then the downside was I'd have to pay them to do that. And I would go, I could still do it myself. And I would, sometimes choose to just do it myself. And if that meant working 6 days a week or 7 days a week or 12-hour days, 14-hour days or whatever it took, I was willing to do that. But I was also in a little bit of a different position at an early age, starting a business. I didn't have a wife. I didn't have kids. And so really it was just me. And so I could be as selfish as I wanted to be in because it was just my time. It was just me. And so that was probably one of the breakthroughs for me when I finally got comfortable with the uncomfortable of delegating responsibilities to others. And even though I grew up in scouting, a lot of people don't realize I'm actually an Eagle Scout. And by the age of 13, I was senior patrol leader of my Boy Scout troop. And I spent years delegating responsibilities, but it wasn't in a business. It was, hey, we're going on this camping trip. You're responsible for food. You're responsible for activities. You do this. And we would delegate everything out. And that taught me a lot of leadership skills, but it still didn't teach me how to do it in business when it came down to having to dig into my pocket to pay someone to do a job. My true breakthrough in business, Dave, of when I started making the most money in business was when I stopped worrying about how much money I could make on everything I did. And I just made it all about like the systems, the processes, and the people. And I knew that the hard work and the effort of doing that was going to pay off in the long run. And when I stopped worrying about how much money can we make today, how much money can we make this week, how much money can we make in the next 30 days, and I just made it more about setting goals and held everyone accountable to those goals. And we did everything that we needed to do to achieve them. That's when business really opened up and grew in a much better way for me.
I would imagine that's a very scary thing to do and probably difficult for any business owner is to, not worry about, and it's not that you're not worried about it. You're setting goals and parameters based on what you would like your income to be for that week, that month, whatever that might be. And it's hard to reel it back and say, let's just do these things. We believe that if we do X, Y, and Z, that we will find that financial goal at the end. But let's not focus on the financial goal. Let's work on the process, procedure, customer journey. So I would imagine that's very difficult for people to understand. But as I've talked to multiple people, it seems to be that way. I talked to a gentleman, our founder from Groovy Hughes, and he mentioned the exact same thing. He said, I never wanted to put down the paintbrush. And then in the first year I put down a paintbrush, we made X.
Yeah.
And the second year I had the paintbrush, we made Y. And those were numbers that I didn't think were going to happen. But you're not going to be able to do all the jobs by yourself.
Correct.
When you have those financial goals of what you want the business to be, it can't be done by yourself.
Yeah.
You're not a one-man band.
One thing I always tell business owners is that you as a business owner are always going to be really good at a lot of things in your business. If it's sales, for example, you'll probably sell better than anyone you'll ever hire. Whether you think you're good at sales or not, just naturally as the business owner, you have a different advantage when you're out there in the field selling something to a consumer, whether that's residential or commercial. But what you can't do is allow the fact that people you might hire might operate at 70% your efficiency, 80 or 90 or 95, get in the way of you recognizing that having 5 people out doing sales for you at 75% of the capacity that you can do it or the return that you could do it is five at that is far better than you as one person being able to go out and maximize every single little dollar you could squeeze out of every appointment and every job that you're performing, or the efficiencies on the operational side. If you're the person that's doing all the scheduling and routing and management of the materials and just what's happening within your business on that operational side of the house. A great example of that is when I got into franchising in 2011, my sister was my general manager of my tree care store, and we were doing about $5 million in revenue. And I was the number one sales guy. And in all the years of owning and running that business, even when I got into franchising, 12 years I was in the tree business. We had hundreds of arborists once we began franchising across the country selling. There was never an arborist that achieved the KPIs that I achieved, from volume of sales, rate per man hour, close ratios, you name it, all the KPIs that we tracked. My sister said to me one day early on in the franchising venture, she goes, Josh, I just don't get it. Why would you not want to focus on your business here that you started, get back into sales? You'd make so much more money than what you are now as you're trying to build this franchising business that you don't know if it's going to work. And I remember saying to her at the time, I said, Jenna, that's a small-minded way of thinking, because think about if I can build this thing where there's, a lot of people out there doing the same thing that I'm only one person and can do for myself, it's going to yield a much better return. It's not going to be the same return per person that it would be if I did it myself, but it's certainly better than one. And she was like, yeah, I don't know about that. And then as I went on and I built the company, and then when I sold it in 2020, she had a humbling moment and she said, you were right. And, it was just a simple example of just something where, yeah, I could have stayed in sales, but I had to accept as a business owner that when I was a guy that was capable of performing much better than everyone I hired, it wasn't about, you can have the best systems and processes, but again, it comes back to the people. How effective are the people at following those processes? How comfortable are those people of asking the uncomfortable question of the customer? Like, I was the type, when I went into somebody's home to sell a service, like, I went in with the assumption I was getting a yes, whether I was inside the home or I was standing on the front lawn. Where I would try to train sales guys that work for me, and they'd say, yeah, I'm not really comfortable asking that question. Where that feels a little pushy. I don't know if I would want to say something that way. And that comes back to that individual person's personality. But most important, it still comes back to their own efforts and what they're comfortable in their own skin doing. The systems and the processes were there, but just because you have the systems and processes, it's not a guarantee of success.
And an older sister or younger sister?
Younger by a year.
Oh, I was going to say, she should have known better than to question her older brother. So that being said, as a business owner, if you were to look at it, what do you think's a more important trait, leadership or industry knowledge?
Leadership, 100%. I got into the tree care business by accident, and 12 years, I was never a certified arborist. I never took a tree down. I ran some of the equipment periodically just for fun. I was an equipment junkie, so I used to love going to job sites and trying stuff out, but I never had to, right? And so I watched, Dave, so many people in the tree care industry, as an example, that these people were in the same market as I was, ran a business a fraction of size of mine, and they were way better at the technical aspect of pruning trees, removing trees with the fanciest techniques, the fanciest gadgets. And what we really knew is we knew volume. And so we weren't the best at pruning trees, but from a business standpoint, I knew how to market it. I knew how to build sales teams, and we knew how to deliver on the customer service. And I remember in the 12 years of running a tree business, I used to joke with friends in business. They'd say, how do you have so many online reviews? I said, start making mistakes. And they go, what do you mean start making mistakes? We take pride in getting everything right the first time. I said, you don't know how many people that you make mistakes on their project that yield a 5-star review because they're blown away when you actually respond to the call and you show up to fix what might not have gone right.
You own up to it. Yeah.
Owned up to it. And I always tell people it's okay to make a mistake. What resonates with people is, what do you do to fix it? And I could go through, when I owned that business, our 5-star reviews and go, that one was a customer that you would have thought you would have got a 1-star review from when you first got the call, but then you fixed it. And all of a sudden they turned out to be a long-term repeat customer, a great referral source, just saying your praises to everybody. So, in business, it's not always about being the best and being perfect. It's just about, delivering what you promised.
And to your point, the problem with that is the fact that a mistake was made, and everyone that's making that call to say said mistake was made, they're waiting for you to tell them, no, I didn't, that's not right, as opposed to just going out there and fixing it, because that's all they want it to be done. I just want it to be fixed. Like, it doesn't matter to me whose problem it is. Right now, it's my problem, and I wanted to push back on your problem because you were my tree repair person, my roof repair, my fence, whatever it might be.
Yep.
And will you just come fix it? And the answer of yes is now to the point of what it's like when you call somebody on the phone. They're like, what? You actually called me and left me a voicemail? I'm used to getting a text or an email or whatnot. So it's important, and it's interesting that you say that most of those reviews came from making a mistake and just making it right with people.
Well, everyone always says customers are always right. And I can tell you from being in business, most of the time the customer is wrong. But you just have to live with the fact as a business owner that if a customer expected something, even if it's not what you sold them and it wasn't part of the project, as long as it's not going to drastically impact, your return on that project, you just have to do it.
Yeah.
And we saw that in the tree business. Someone would call and say, well, I thought you were going to do this to my tree, but we agreed to do X, but they expected Y, and you just got to do it. Because if you go back and say, that wasn't included, it's just going to result in a negative impact. And you can't put a value to that long-term return of them coming back as a customer and the people that they're going to speak to and share your praise and really share their experience and give praise to you and your business to a lot of other people.
Yeah. As we shift to advice for people looking into business ownership, what would be the first thing you would tell someone stepping into business ownership today?
The first thing I would tell them is just really think about your why. And your why can't be because I want to make money or I want to make more money. A lot of times those are the wrong reasons to get into business, is just for the opportunity to try to make more money. I really listen for things of like, what's the impact you want to make? People ask me a lot, Dave, what's your long-term goal? What is it about business ownership really drove you? What do you love about franchising? And, for me, I'm at a moment in my life where I tell people I focus more on legacy than anything. Everyone always stops at vision and goals. And I always say it's vision, goals, and legacy. And so for like me, like when I think about today, when someone approaches me about a business opportunity or I'm looking at a new business opportunity myself, I think about what's the impact? What's the impact that this is going to make? What's the impact I can make, on the general public by doing this? And so that's what I really encourage people to think about. What is it beyond being your own boss and making money that's really motivating you to want to be in business? And I hear people tell me so many different things. People say, I love the idea of, providing opportunities to people in industries that might not have a lot of opportunities today. I love the opportunity of being able to provide a level of a feeling and level of ownership interest in a new business that I know little to nothing about as I'm getting into it, but I'm going to be able to empower them with their, 5, 10, 20 years of knowledge or whatever they bring to the table to have a sense of ownership in something that we're building within a local community. The ability to provide consumers with a level of customer service that they deserve within a specific industry. Like, those are reasons to get into business. And as I said earlier, like if you do the right thing and you build the business, the money's going to follow and you'll be perfectly fine.
And so that being said, and even as you started before and where you are now, how important, and you just touched on it a little bit, but it brought up a question in my mind. How important is your personal brand and taking that brand, which is then your business, and being involved in the community, your local community?
Well, being involved in a local community, I think, is extremely important. You want to build and develop a reputation as a trusted, contractor or business owner within the marketplace. If you just think today in your personal life, there's things that you go to, whether it's a local touch a truck event, you go to your kid's school, your kids play sports if you've got kids at home, and what do you see? Like, there's people that sponsor those teams. There's in the back of the outfield on the baseball field, there's usually on the fence, all kinds of advertisements. Those people don't make those decisions to advertise in those locations or support those programs for the direct return that they're going to see out of that one individual spend. What they're really doing it for is the branding recognition to show that they support the local community. And in return, the local community is going to want to support them. But when you think about just personal brand, you have to make it about the company. I've watched a lot of people over the years that have worked in sales within businesses that have left and they've gone to another company within the same industry. And they believed that everything that they brought into the business while they were there was a result of themselves. And they've been highly disappointed as they left, and the client or customer remained loyal to the company that they used to work at. And they didn't get the number of people to come with them or follow them that they might have thought. So again, make it about building the business brand. It's not so much about the person or the individual. It's about that vision and that legacy that we speak about of, who are you going to be known as within the local community?
That's awesome. Well, Josh, thank you so much for your time. Thank you guys for joining the Franchise Frontier podcast. If there was one thing as I think back on this podcast quickly, what's a big takeaway is success comes from building systems, trusting your people, having a great attitude, and grinding. So Josh, thank you so much. Appreciate you guys being on the podcast. Like and subscribe and tune into the next episode. Thank you.